So last week I was invited to attend a workshop with my coach, Rich Litvin's coaching group. And he had a woman who is part of his community and who works with him, who had some corporate knowledge to share, some interesting information on how to deal with the coronavirus crisis and leadership. So I'm very careful about where I'm spending my time these days because everybody's offering free stuff. Everybody's sharing their 2 cents. And Rich introduced this amazing woman named Vicki Shillington. And over the next hour, she shared some of the most incredibly focused and useful information on leading in these times that I had heard in countless workshops and talks. So I asked Vicki to be on the show. Vicki is the Chief Happiness Officer at ThinkShift. Now, when you hear Chief Happiness Officer, you might think, new age life coachy kind of person. But Vicki is the real deal. 20 years of experience as an executive consultant at North Highland, at Anderson, at IBM. You don't get any more substantial than that. She's led businesses through digital transformation for Fortune 500 companies. Her sweet spot is tackling underlying culture shifts required for true organizational transformation, which is why this is such a good topic for her. Vicki, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Mark. What a joy to be here today.
So I was so blown away by what you shared with the group because it was specifically for a group of coaches on how to help them help their clients lead. So it was really very, very useful. And you talked about the 3 stages of dealing with a crisis. But before we go into that, why is this such a passion for you? Why are you so good at helping leaders figure out what to do now?
Yeah, that is such a great question. We've been in crisis before. This is not the first time. And what we've noticed is every time you go into crisis, there's a series of changes you go through. And for those that are familiar with change curve theory or even grief theory, there's a number of emotions that we experience, but they're all fairly complicated. So we thought, how cool would it be just to distill this down into something that's fairly simple to get your head around, that talks about not only the actions and the emotions you're going through, but what you can expect in others and how to help support them as they go through this type of change. You can predict it.
So because corporate culture and technology and shift is your baby, the people that you tend to collaborate with, this was a deliberate exercise on your part because I was telling people about this before I heard your talk, bits and pieces, of what you were talked about was the conversations I was having. When I heard you, it was just so distilled down. So it's a very deliberate and very sharp way of transferring information.
Yeah, and I think ThinkShift, we're a group of leaders who figured out, been business executives ourselves, what is it other leaders need, and we're able to distill those concepts down into something that's very poignant. And so this is one of those models that are just great to share because everybody needs it right now.
The word poignant actually fits because I watch people relax when they hear what we're about to talk about. Like they see, you paint a map and then they see where they are on the map so they can figure out where they want to go. And then when they're helping other people, they can see where other people are on the map and they can help them get where they need to go. So the whole thing was really useful.
Yeah, and it's one of those things when you're in a pandemic like we are and everything feels so uncertain and there isn't a framework or a mental model, the brain doesn't like that. The brain likes some sort of structure to be able to figure out how do we get through this. So I find this mental model really helpful as a way of navigating myself and those around me. Like, where are we and how do we get through this so that we know what we're about to experience and that it's okay. We're not alone.
Okay, now that I know the people who are listening are saying, would you please get on with it? I want to know what this wisdom is. What are the 3 stages of a crisis that what we're going through?
So the way you can think about it is the first stage that we go through is chaos, where there's a lot of uncertainty. And as we come out that stage, we then get into what we call the acceptance of, okay, I understand what this is all about. And then finally, you're going to enter into what everyone's calling the new normal. So if you think of those 3 chunks as what you can expect to experience through any crisis, any change you're going through in life, then you know it's okay. And I'm going to tell you the emotions that go with it. So whether it's the pandemic, whether it's a layoff, whether you're getting divorced, it doesn't really matter what it is. even exciting things, you tend to go through these three phases where there's a degree of uncertainty and fear. Then there's a degree of, oh, I can actually do this. I can get through this, whatever it's going to take. And then you come out the other side and you look for those opportunities.
So at the time that we're recording this, we're about 4 or 5 weeks into being stuck at home, into the the chaos. Would you say that we're through chaos, or do you think we're still in chaos, or are some people still in chaos?
Some people are still in chaos. I think when you think of chaos categorized as uncertainty, chaos is where your world's been turned upside down. And a lot of people have lost their jobs. A lot of people aren't quite sure how to pay rent. A lot of people are ill. They are definitely still experiencing chaos, just the uncertainty. When you're in that stage of just feeling really uncertain and scared and hard to see beyond any kind of safety and well-being, whether it's your financial safety, your emotional safety, your physical safety, you're in chaos if that's how you're feeling. So I think there are people, all spectrums, but definitely a lot feeling that they're still in a very uncertain period.
So then let's since people are still in that chaos piece, let's talk about what is it like? What are the emotions that come up in this time?
So when we think about safety, what tends to happen if we feel unsafe is we're in fight or flight. So any kind of reactive behavior is what you can expect. So it could be, I was out the other day with my husband and, he was talking to someone in a store and it was just that fight or flight of, what's he doing talking to somebody? Why is he that close? It's that need to protect and feel safe. And it's completely irrational, but we can't help it. It's very primal. So if you feel those feelings bubbling up, know that, and you just want to run away or you want to hunker down, fight, flight,
Or lash out.
Or lash out, know that that's normal. That's where that comes from. It's a very adrenaline-based, a very fear-based response. So there's energy that's released during this phase as well. You feel like you should be doing a lot because you feel like you need to get through this. But it's temporary. It's not something that's going to last for any period of time.
I found that really fascinating in your talk when you said we're being fueled by adrenaline. We seem to have some energy. The company seems to have energy. People are running around getting technology set up so we can work from home and do all these things. But that adrenaline, and we talk about it with women. Like women often go into adrenal fatigue because they don't have testosterone, so they try to work like men. And then over several years, like they crash and burn because they don't have that replenishment that they need to be able to burn at that rate. So that's the same for all of us now as we're burning these adrenals and we're in fight or flight and we look at elevator buttons as if there's something really scary now. So what's happening in companies now? What are the companies thinking about?
So companies are thinking of two things. One is my financials. How healthy am I? Am I going to get through this okay? And what do my customers need? So a lot of companies are actually pivoting right now. I have a former client who makes aprons for the best chefs in the world. And she's pivoted to making face masks. She's taken all those seamstresses, paired up with a doctor, and they have a whole campaign about wake up and fight. And so they are creating these magnificent masks that are very functional as well to be able to take care of people rather than letting her seamstresses dwindle away because the restaurant business was no longer ordering aprons.
So even though she's still in chaos, she was able to take that energy and pivot early.
Yeah. She was one of the very early adopters. Not many can do that in the chaos zone. They usually struggle there for a little while. And what happens with teams is you'll find people do basic activities. So they'll do all the things that are asked of them, but they're not going to do anything more because they're also operating under fear. So if I'm operating under fear and I have to make a risky decision, I'm not going to do it because I'm worried about my job. But I'm also now going to feel extremely guilty that I should be doing more. So you'll see me on at 10 o'clock at night taking emails or 7 a.m. or whatever it might be. And I feel guilty, but everything I'm doing is very tactical. It's very reactive. Is it adding value beyond basic tactics? Probably not. But I don't know how else to operate. So that's
right. So lots of busy work so I can feel like I'm doing something, but not a lot of thought into it, not a lot of creativity.
Yeah. And if you think about the pandemic, I mean, it's forced us indoors. It's forced us away from each other. It's saying, hey, slow down, reconnect. And what are we doing? We're just getting busier and busier because we feel so guilty. And we feel like we should be out there doing so much. But actually it's asking us, it's telling us, it's like, slow down, connect, do the important things. But when we're in that fear-based stage, it's very difficult to do that.
So what do we do for ourselves in that state?
Key things. One is to make yourself feel safe. And if you're with others, high empathy, be there with them. Now, don't take on what they're feeling, because that'll exhaust you and you'll need to vent, and that's not healthy either. But just be there with them. So rather than, hey, you'll get over this, it's going to be fine, just recognize where they are and be okay with wherever they are and just be there with them. And where possible, make them feel safe in whatever way you can. It might be there's some things you can do physically to make sure that they're safe. I know people are doing grocery shopping for elder people. There's different things we can do to take care of each other. But whatever you do, just make them feel as safe as possible so that they can move on from this phase. Because until that fear is gone, you're going to be in chaos. You just can't get out of it. It just is so paralyzing.
So if you're leading people and you need to, at this point in time, you still need them to be productive. How do you lead them and how do you guide them into what needs to be done?
So the key, and this is a whole other topic on its own, is the balance of action and empathy. So make sure you're taking enough time in every conversation just to be present with them and check in on how are they and how are their families and are they actually safe and how are they dealing with any kids or relatives or work life that they have to manage that's going on around them. What does that look like for them? It's not usually a conversation that many managers and leaders want to have day in, day out, but this is the time where we need to do that. Just pause and just check in with them before moving them to, hey, these are probably the 2 or 3 most important things for us to do today. Are you okay with that?
I saw someone talking about her boss calling her, and her boss called her and says, hey, how you doing? And she said, oh no, I'm fine, I'm good. What do you need? And she said her boss said, no, none of us are fine. I'm not fine. You're not fine. Tell me how you're really doing. And I almost cried when I thought of that. That's a leader. That's someone who's like, let's take a moment. We'll get to what needs to be done. Let's take a moment and be human beings together.
Yeah, and that's what I call operating from huge personal power, where you operate from who you are and what you stand for, not necessarily because you have a title or because you know some stuff. You're really operating from, I'm a human, you're a human, I'm going to connect with you as a human and lead from that place and know that that's where you're going to follow from. Doesn't matter that I also have a title and I might have some content knowledge as well. That's irrelevant.
I think it takes a lot of personal work, doing your own work, in order to be able to let yourself be open in that way. So it's definitely a plug for leadership skills and doing your own internal work.
Yeah, it really is, because as many individuals move up the ranks, when they are superstar performers and they want to become a manager, all they think of is title and money. They don't really realize the dark side.
Yeah.
And they're like, I can do it. I don't know what those managers do all day. I can do all that. I can get more money and a title. And unless you unlearn everything that made you successful before, then all you're going to do is keep on doing. And because you know the how so well, it's going to feel to others like you are micromanaging them. And nobody likes that. And so learning, okay, well, it's not about me doing it. I might be the best at it and I might be the fastest at it, but how do I actually figure out what motivates them and what is their thinking preference and what is their background and their style? And then what's the best way to get this work done through them? And how competent are they and how motivated are they? You can take all those dimensions into consideration. Then it becomes, okay, this is a brand new skill for me to learn to get things done through others. Not easy. I struggled at it for 3 years. It was a disaster for 3 years.
Only 3 years. That's good. It's funny because a lot of the new leaders that I work with, one of the hardest things is because they got promoted for doing the job better than anybody else. It's really hard for them to let other people screw up the work.
Yeah.
And then learn and bring it and send it back and teach them how to be better and how to be better. It's like, I could do it in 5 minutes myself.
Yeah.
But you're doing a disservice to yourself and you're teaching them to give you shoddy work.
Yeah. So this is a great time, for leaders and managers just to realize that, hey, everything's off the table now. It's not about a judgment on you. We're all in this weird period together. So just take the time and be there for them as human to human. You can do that. And for your families, because it's going to help them move on to the next stage quicker. And that's the goal. We want to get everyone through this as quickly as we can.
The other thing that I found really interesting for me as a coach and helping other people through, because I was really not fazed by this. I'm pretty zen. I'm pretty I take things as they come and all that. And I'm watching other people panic, other people. And one of the things you said is be where people are. right? Don't try and get them where you are. And I think I did a pretty good job, but I really checked myself to see where was I cheerleading a little bit too much? Where was I bringing people along and not being with them first? And you said something really key to me was a good leader will be who they need you to be. Like be big, go be who they need you to be. And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, the key is to be daring, to be bold, to be dynamic, but be you, and be okay with that, especially now, because if we think about 5 years' time, if we're sitting here in 5 years thinking about Q2 2020, we're not thinking about how busy we were and all those Zoom calls and all those emails we got out. We're thinking about the impact I was able to have in the world. Was I able to slow down and get my own routine in place to take care of me? Was I able to reconnect with my family and build greater bonds with them? If we're not doing that, what a waste of time. And not that work isn't important, absolutely. But what are those high value activities we should be doing as opposed to busy, busy, busy with very little to show for it?
That moves us definitely into the next phase, which is acceptance. How do we know we're moving? How do we know when it's time to move into acceptance or that we have moved into acceptance?
So acceptance feels like, oh my gosh, this is going on for a very long time. I thought it would be done in a few weeks. It's deep frustration. So you're there when you're having that sinking feeling of it's much, much longer than any of us could have potentially anticipated. And for me, this was definitely a feeling I had about a week ago here in California when we were told we're going to be in lockdown until May 15. And even though my crystal ball said June at the earliest, still hearing that I wouldn't see another human being other than my husband, who I love to pieces, or the grocery store workers, for another month, that's a long time. And so that heavy feeling definitely sunk in. Even though I thought I was in acceptance, that definitely resonated in a deeper way in my soul of, okay, hunker down for the long haul. This is it, right? And even then, that's probably ambitious. May 15th, it's probably going to go beyond that. So you have a choice now. Either you endure and you just get yourself through it, or you can thrive. You have a choice to make.
That's a tough one, right? That's a tough one to even know that you have the choice to just trudge through, or I am going to make something of this.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And
so but you also talk, the adrenaline crash after, when we get into acceptance, we're no longer being fueled by that fight or flight. So now it's heavier. We're tireder. So you're saying, all right, do I just endure or do I thrive? But I also don't have the energy to really dig in and figure something out. So like, what do we do with ourselves here?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And that energy drops, but you also start to feel guilty because now you really feel like you should be doing more and you just don't have it. It's gone, and you can, again, force your way through it. I've got various clients who are pushing through no matter what cost, and I'm seeing the effect it's taking on them.
What's the effect?
It's very difficult for them to be there for their people other than as a tactical, reactive leader. They're not able to be there as a high empathy individual who can shift their people from chaos into acceptance into the new normal quickly.
And what's the cost? What's the cost of that?
Oh my gosh, it's huge, both for themselves and their teams, because for themselves, we're in for the long haul. So if we come out of this and we're burnt toast, and we come out the other side, and now the world's back on high energy and rebuild and go, and you're like, oh my God, I'm absolutely frazzled down at the soul level. We just won't be able to keep up. And then at a team level, well, they're feeling lost. So yes, they're getting basic activities done and things can sort of feel normal on the surface, but internally they're in turmoil and there's no one to support them.
So you need to, it really is imperative that you slow down and less of the tactical and more, and your job actually is not as much getting things done, but helping your people along so they get to the next phase in a healthier manner.
Yeah. And a lot of the clients are coming to us, well, hey, like help us with well-being 100, like for the next 100 days. We don't have the bandwidth and energy to be there for our people in that high empathy way and guide them from chaos to acceptance to new normal. That's so important.
Oh, so they hire you to love them.
Yeah, more than love, like just help them through the emotional hell they're in right now.
Right.
I wish we could hug them, but hey.
You know, I'll tell you, in talking to you, anybody who talks to you, I'm sure feels hugged.
Oh,
So what are the activities? What should we be focusing on now that we're in it for the long haul? We don't know what the new normal is yet, but we're kind of like, all right, I'm in week 4. I'm week 5 of, I'm actually getting up and getting dressed and taking a shower and shaving. Like, now what? What should I be looking for myself to thrive here?
well, the main thing here is recognizing that energy is going to drop both yourself and your teams and your organization, and that's okay. So focusing in on doing less and doing it well. It might sound counterintuitive, but this is the time to take stock and think, okay, for the last 4 or 5 weeks, we were super busy, but what did we get done that actually mattered, that will matter in 5 years, right? And then once you figured out less and do it well rather than more, then it's also thinking about how am I taking care of myself and my family and my work? This fusion of work and family and self, it's joined together now in a way that's never going to be ripped
Yeah,
apart.
work life balance takes on a whole new meaning. It's now work life integration.
Integration completely. It's before with the little boundaries on the outside. Now it's just this mesh together, and that's not going to go away. I mean, schools are really looking at how much do we want people to come back to school? How much is it going to be homeschooling? The whole world is going to change off the back of this. We're going to have it from a social distancing perspective in restaurants and flights and businesses. How comfortable are we around others? So we're going to have to build that inner stamina for integrated work life. So this is the time to limit your media. I mean, media is bleak and depressing, and there's a great distinction between news and coverage. When I was growing up back in South Africa, and even when I was in the UK for 20 years, we used to have news hits twice a day. They'd be in the morning and the evening, and it's going back to that model. Coverage is 24/7, it's sensationalism, it's tragedy, it's glory. Go back to the, hey, once or twice a day, what do I need to know from a source that is reliable so that you know the facts and that's it. Don't worry about the rest. So that's critically important. I did that a couple of weeks ago, turned off all my social media other than for business, my mainstream media. I get the headlines from my husband. That's all I need to know. And I feel so much more relaxed because it weighs down on you hearing sad, depressing news day in, day out. So that's another key one.
And because it's so sensational, it's hard to get back to concentrating on what it is you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
So you're not doing the world any good by being informed by who tweeted what at this moment.
No, it's a little bit like watching the stock market day in, day out. I mean, you drive yourself insane. You're there for the long term, or you're supposed to be there for the long term, because the long term is where you get the benefit. If you're watching it up and down, you drive yourself crazy. So it's the same sort of thing. It's, okay, what do I need to know? Are the trends going up or down? How do I take care of myself? But watching it moment by moment unfold, it's heavy. The human brain can't deal with all of that.
Right. So now is a time to set boundaries, to set routines,
Yeah, yeah.
and again, figure out how to integrate your work, because you do have to work and you're in the middle of your family.
And when we used to fly, they would say, put your own mask on first, as opposed to the masks we're wearing right now. But it's back to that. It's like, okay, what are you doing in terms of exercise? That relaxes our anxiety levels. What are you doing in terms of nutrition and water and sleep? We need more sleep right now. If you don't do those things, you're not going to come out of this in a way that you have the inner strength to be able to get going at the pace the world is going to need you at. So putting your own mask on first, taking the time. I'm making sure every day, doesn't happen every day, but I try a couple of hours in the morning. I wake up really early and I just try and spend from 4 till 6 or 5 till 7, where I really do my exercise. I have the nutrition I need, meditation, prayer. I get myself set up. And the days I do it, I'm on fire. And the days I don't do it, I'm in a funk. And it's very interesting as an experiment to try that. But my goal is to come out of this period with those new habits as just who Vicki is. It's not something I have to fight for anymore. So when I have to go back into that fast world, I'm doing it at the pace where I've actually got the inner strength that's needed going forward. So
I
I can
think the
stay healthy.
the two things I've done well is I started calorie counting before this all started, and it was a revelation to me, because I
Yeah.
fought with food and nutrition for so long, and and now that this happened, I think I'm the only person who's not overeating on the planet, because I eat what I want, but I stay within my calories. Shout out to
Great.
Jason Goggins for that one. Listen to that podcast if you want. It's a couple episodes back. But the other thing is, I made sure I got up, did my meditation, did my journaling, did my exercise, and got dressed and took a shower every day since this started because of my ADD and because, my addiction to drama and chaos. I could totally use this as an opportunity that the whole world is on vacation and I can do whatever I want. So that's really helped me, is those boundaries, to not feel out of control at this time.
Well, every time you do that and you do something for yourself like that, and you take care of you, actually what you're building is inner self-esteem. And we all need inner self-esteem because we all have great outer self-esteem. We get all this validation from everybody else, the props. We want to feel like we're great, but we don't have great inner self-esteem. We don't have those great boundaries. So every time you keep your promise to, hey, working out or eating well, or tracking your calories or meditating, whatever you do to take care of you, every time you do that, you're building your inner self-esteem. So when someone comes to you and they are encroaching on your boundaries, so perhaps they ask you for something that you really shouldn't be doing for them, you'll have the inner strength to have a kind conversation with them and let them down in a way that's very gracious. But if you don't have that inner self-esteem, then you just a yes, 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 people pleaser, doing all the things that you really shouldn't be doing for everybody else, but not for yourself. And we know the consequences, they're catastrophic.
And I'm reading ahead, and I hope people listen all the way through, because I'm reading ahead, and what you're saying is really useful for the next phase. But still, we're in the acceptance phase. How should leaders work with their people at this point? What should they point them to be doing? What should they point them to be focusing on?
So because there will be a sense of feeling heavy and that the energy's draining, just because this is in for the long term, it's still making sure that they are empathetic with their individuals. But we can now switch to focusing on a little bit more of the short-term opportunities and things that are a little bit more about, hey, new problems, new things out there, but doing it in a very measured way. So choosing them, but choosing less and doing them very, very well. That's going to be key. So we don't
do
have
less, but do it well.
Yeah, that's the key message here. Yeah. And this is the time when you do have that internal strength and you're thriving rather than enduring. This is the time for opportunities. If you think about the barrier to entry in this phase as an entrepreneur, it's low, because if you have this great idea and the economy is all over the place and you could lose your job at any time, why not try that new thing? If you think about 2008, this is when we had Airbnb and Groupon and Uber and Venmo and Slack, and so many different companies came off the back of that. And we'll have the same here. The organization I talked about that was pivoting from aprons to masks, Headley and Bennett, same thing. There's so many opportunities, but you have to have that inner strength. If you're operating in fight or flight or freeze, if you're fear-based, that is nowhere on your agenda. Even if it's a faint idea, you just don't have the energy to even give it any horsepower.
How do you make sure that you're choosing thriving instead of just like, how do you snap yourself out of the malaise, that the inertia that would be pulling you down? How do you snap yourself out and go, you know what, I'm actually going to get myself up even though I don't feel like it, put my sneakers on, exercise, I'm going to try this project at work? How do you do that?
Well, I think just you won't always be able to do that. I think that's the most important thing. I think some days you just will feel flat. I have days where I just feel flat.
It's as coaches, as people who are motivators, it's so hard to thread the needle of be kind to yourself and stretch yourself, be kind to yourself and stretch yourself. And then listening to when is it a stretch to be kind to yourself and rest? And when is it a stretch when you got to get yourself moving? And that, I find that struggle for myself too.
Yeah, no, 1,000%. And it's, I think it's very easy to say, okay, I'm in this phase now I should be go, go, go and look for opportunities. But your energy is going to be low. It is still tough. We're in a really, really tough situation. Humans are not meant to be incarcerated. You look at the astronauts or those in solitary confinement. There's some real studies and research out there. This is just not a good condition for humans to be in. So know that it's okay to feel low and have compassion. I'm napping a lot these days. A lot of sleeps, a lot of naps. That's a beautiful thing. Never was able to do that before. I'm still doing my work, but choosing the things that are going to have high impact. And everything else, I'm like, hey, I can have a to-do list, and it's okay if it doesn't get done, if it's not high impact. Will it matter in 5 years? Let it go. And this leads me on to a really useful concept of what's really important. I like to think of life in 5-year chunks. So between the ages of 20 and 65, you get 9 rolls of the dice if you think of those 5-year chunks. Now, if you know what's really, really important to you, so say in the 20s, you say, hey, it's my studying. then everything else is going to come secondary. As much as making money, having fun, all those things will be out there. You've said studying and getting the skills you need for your career is the most important. So it allows you to really prioritize when things come down to it.
Mine was drinking and having sex. So we obviously have a different idea of what the 20s were. I don't remember most of them.
I love that.
I did study in my 30s, though. I got straight A's in my 30s.
Yeah, there we go. So, that was your focus, right? So everything else, even though you wanted it, it all came secondary. And I find it really helpful because humans love to have their cake and eat it, and it just doesn't work. It comes at a huge personal cost of burnout. So it's saying, hey, okay, so what do I want for the next 5 years? Has this time caused me to slow down and reevaluate? Do I want something different? Is this the time for my family? Mm. And then it allows you to make priority calls. If there's a meeting you have to go to, a kid's recital, even though they're both really important, 9 times out of 10, you'll make the right call because you've decided in your soul what's most important for you. But you also know the cost of it. Mm. There's always a cost. It always comes out in the wash. And so you can then say, you know what, for the next 5 years, I'm going to focus in on maximizing my income. And everything else will come secondary. And your family will understand that because you've already invested in them. So it means you can do all the things you want to do in life, but not try and do them all at once, because that's when we have the terrible fallout of those decisions.
For some people, with the wherewithal, maybe I want to change. It's almost like midlife. My whole focus here with midlife is: do you have the opportunity to choose a different trajectory? Some people will have an opportunity to choose a different trajectory. Other people will be in dire straits, and the next 5 years is about rebuilding and and really getting things back in shape. You just don't know what stage 3 is going to be.
Yeah, right? And that's why it's really worth thinking through. What is the next 5 years? A lot of people are reevaluating what's actually important to them, given how they've lived for the last month. Do we really want to go back to that pace of commuting and work and mindless activity, or is there a different way we can live, and to what end?
Right. Never take for granted a hug from a stranger again. Right.
Right. Right.
So now we're moving into the new normal. We don't know when that's going to be. We don't know what, we don't know what's going to stay from this. We don't know what's going to leave. We don't know what's going to be different. So how do we enter into the new normal when they start turning back on the economy and they start saying it's time to go back to work? Let's just say it's safe. Let's just say they've already given us guidelines so we can do that. What should we expect?
So you'll know you're there when you feel like you have hope again, when you feel like you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Like right now, we don't know. Like we see glimmers, and then we get put back in our box. We just have no idea. So when you really know that, hey, I can see the end, whatever it might be, a vaccine, or there's some degree of safety that's been established, you'll be like, okay, it's time for the opportunities. But we need to know at this stage, things are actually going to feel a little bit of a struggle, because for those of us that are not commuting, if we have to start commuting again, and I'm in Los Angeles, I've got the lovely 405, that adds a lot of pressure to your day. If you think about teams, a lot of my clients are saying the drama's dropped away. There's no drama. There's none of this catty back and forth, just gone. They're just happy to be connected by Zoom. The distractions, we love the water cooler moments, but they're very distracting. So I think all that comes back in when we've had this period of relative calm and quiet, even though we're super, super busy with kids and Zoom and everything else. Now we've got all those additional pressures added back on. And then you add on top of that companies are ready to pivot and reinvest and do whatever they need to do to come out the other side strong. So they're on a high go, go, go agenda. And then a lot of teams will probably be feeling the pinch because any of the hiring requisitions have been frozen. They're not hiring. There might be team layoffs. You've got less resourcing. And companies have a very short-term memory. They kind of forget that your team has shrunk.
Right. This needs to be done. It doesn't matter if you have 3 less people.
Yeah. In the beginning, it'll be a lot more of, hey, we'll downsize. We'll measure the work to the team size. And then reality hits and they've forgotten all that. The memory becomes really, really short. And suddenly you have to go with limited resources.
So you don't have the energy, right? You have all this stimulus coming your way. And this is when you say that you actually need to put it in high gear because company loyalty is going to be low. There's going to be talent. There's going to be a talent pool out there looking for your job. So you really do need to be looking over your shoulder. You really do need to find that. So again, that dichotomy of, I don't feel like it, but this is the time when I got to find my grit and really jump in.
And that's why right now, if you're in acceptance or moving from chaos to acceptance, having your own routine of sleep and water and meditation and exercise, all the things we know as humans that have been proven in the science to nourish us and fill our cup becomes so important. Because if your tank's empty, how are you going to go? If your gas tank's empty, how's your car going to go? It doesn't work like that. So then you're going to be filled with more fear and looking over your shoulder more and more and more. Don't do that. Take this opportunity, take this time to re-nourish and build yourself.
This is where I was reading ahead, because I constantly say, do tomorrow's Mark a favor, do next month's Mark a favor,
Right?
do the new normal, do the person, whoever has to go back to work, back to commuting, back to competing, back to all that stuff. Do that person a favor and do the development work now, do the boundary work, do the self-care, do everything that you can do now to fortify yourself so that when it's go time, you're ready.
Yeah. Yeah. What a wasted opportunity if we don't. And it's not easy. But every day, just try a little something that just makes it a bit easier. Just do it. It's not easy. Come out of this healthier and stronger. And it's not easy. But if you don't do it now, you're never going to do it. And this is the time.
This is a time. I love the meme where it says, I always thought it was because I didn't have time, why my house was dirty. And I found out it wasn't because I didn't have time. So like I've been talking to my clients, I'm like, pick up an instrument, do something.
Yeah.
It's got to be fun, it's got to be interesting, but like, let's use this time, let's get the creative juices going. So it's been a really, I've said for myself that if I don't come out of this with the final draft of my book, I've failed coronavirus pandemic, right? Like, so again, on one hand, be kind to myself. If I don't, it's totally understandable, but it is a really good thing to be focused on and try and accomplish.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's that balancing act of as you mentioned, the compassion for yourself, that if you are feeling low or sad, because we can go back into chaos at any time as well. So it's recognizing that we can go backwards and forwards, and other people are going to be in different phases at different times. And so being compassionate, but also using it wisely. And that's going to be the balance, day by day, moment by moment.
So I could talk to you for probably 6 hours. I got to ask you one more question because you just brought it up. And so let's say we're doing good. So this morning I woke up angry. I've been great. I've been happy. I've been fine. I woke up this morning angry and down and dark and nothing. Like, it took me hours and dancing and all kinds of stuff to get myself to where I could be of use to the human race. Right. What if we find ourselves slipping, because we are going to go back and forth and up and down and in and out?
Yeah.
How do we handle those transitions?
So think of it as if you were dealing with a 5-year-old child who was feeling angry and or sad or whatever, and just speak as kind and compassionate as you would to them, and recognize that it's sadly normal. It's okay with whatever's coming up for us. The old Vicki would have just said, power through, ignore those emotions, just deal with it. But I'm realizing that you actually have to feel the emotions. You have to live with them so that they pass through you. Otherwise, they get stored in your body. So the key is just be okay with feeling angry and know that it'll pass. Be okay with feeling sad and know that it'll pass. Think of that 5-year-old child and just think of the compassion and love you'd give them. You wouldn't tell them to get over it. You just allow them to feel what they were feeling.
I will tell you, dancing did it. I
Oh.
journaled, I prayed, I meditated, and then I danced. And the dancing finally did it. I was like, I remember Titus Kahutek, who's also on the show. He's a physical trainer. He told me, Mark, I'd rather see you dancing than be on that elliptical. And I was like, all right, disco music, Earth, Wind, and Fire,
I was going to ask you, what was your music of choice?
Earth, Wind, and Fire will get you through a pandemic. I will tell you that right now. Vicki, where can people find you?
So they can find me on LinkedIn at Vicki Shillington, or our website, Think Shift with a Q. We shift thinking, and on Instagram as well, Vic Shillington.
I'm going to put all that in the show notes so people don't have to remember it, and they can just click on you and find you. Anything cool coming up for you or you're just kind of working with your clients? So what are you creating for that's next?
Yeah, what we've already been asked to create for them is like this discipline for how do you create those schedules so that you can take care of yourself, that you're not always on at 10 p.m. at night. That's a whole different mindset and discipline. That's a little bit like a rewiring of 100 days. So we're helping them with that. And how not to go dark during this period. So I'm working from home. What's the right level of interaction I need to be having with my team members and my peers so that I'm not overwhelming everybody, but I'm not going dark. So there's a lot of really important work that has to happen to help people pivot and become truly effective. So not just enabled remotely, but they're actually effective remotely. So doing a lot of that kind of stuff, because the most important thing when we think about these 3 phases is that not only can we go backwards, but we actually have to match our response to where the person's at. Because if we're in acceptance and logical and rational, looking for new opportunities, and they're still in chaos, we can come across as a real asshole. So we have to be really careful about, tuning and matching our response, but also supporting the organizations at where they're at right now and how do they need to think about reentry. That's a whole complex beast all on its own.
Mm. So you promised to come back, and we're going to talk about those things in the near future. So I appreciate you spending the time and educating us.
I'd love that. What an honor. Lovely to share with you guys.
So thank you for being here. And to everybody else, you can listen to this twice, 3 times, take copious notes. The wisdom Vicki shared, as I shared it with my clients and other leaders, they sopped it up and really pivoted with what we were just talking about. So take it, use it, be kind to yourself. I love you, and have a great rest of the day.